when my son Ethan Crawford passed away. Grief was already tearing me apart. But my daughter-in-law, Monica Lewis, made sure heartbreak was not enough. Standing in the living room that I thought of as home, she told me with a smirk, "Stop pretending you matter. Pack your bags and learn to survive." Those words cut deeper than the funeral itself. Within hours, I was thrown into my old sedan with only a few boxes of clothes and medicine, left to shiver through February nights in a grocery store parking lot. Just when I thought I had reached the lowest point of my life, Ethan's lawyer called me with news that turned despair into power. My son had hidden $6.5 million away, and it was meant only for me. That call would change everything. Before I continue, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if your daughter-in-law threw you out of your home the same day you buried your son? The church bells were still echoing in my ears when I returned to what I thought was my home. The funeral had been unbearable. My son Ethan Crawford had been lowered into the ground just hours before, and the weight of that final goodbye clung to my chest like a stone I could not shift. I walked into the living room slowly, leaning on the doorframe for balance, the scent of funeral flowers still clinging to my coat. That was when Monica Lewis, my daughter-in-law, turned toward me with folded arms and cold eyes. Her words came out as sharp as broken glass. "Stop pretending you matter. Pack your bags and learn to survive." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. My ears rang from the exhaustion of grief, and I actually asked her to repeat herself. But she did not waver. She gestured toward a row of cardboard boxes already stacked against the wall. My clothing, my medications, even the framed photo of Ethan and me fishing when he was 12, everything was already sealed away like trash waiting for the curb. The sight made my knees weaken. I stumbled and caught myself against the doorframe as her smirk widened. "Monica, we buried Ethan this afternoon," I said, my voice breaking as I tried to keep it steady. "How can you talk like this right now?" Her reply was as cruel as it was deliberate. "That is exactly why. Ethan is gone. His obligations died with him. You were his guest, Harold, not mine. And as of today, your stay here is over," as she reached into her purse and dangled a shiny new set of house keys, testing one in the front door as though I were already invisible. I looked at the boxes again, the handwriting on them unmistakably mine from years ago, when I had labeled tools and winter gear after my stroke. She had gone through my belongings during the funeral, while I was saying goodbye to my only son. The sheer calculation of it made my stomach twist. "Please," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I just need some time. A week, maybe even a few days, to figure something out. I cannot walk away from everything. Like this, your time ran out the moment Ethan did." Her voice carried no hesitation, no grief, only triumph. "You are on your own now. Learn to live like everyone else does," I wanted to argue. I wanted to remind her of the breakfasts Ethan and I used to share at the kitchen table, the months I had spent recovering from my stroke in the small guest room down the hall, the evenings I had read bedtime stories to their daughter Clara while Monica was away on her trips. But her eyes held nothing but contempt, and before I could gather my words, there was a knock at the door. She opened it with a smile that chilled me. Standing outside was a tall man in an expensive coat, his briefcase polished, his shoes leaving wet marks from the February slush. "Perfect timing, Justin," Monica said, stepping aside to let him in. Justin Whitfield, Ethan's lawyer, walked into the living room, avoiding my eyes as he set a folder on the coffee table. "Mr. Crawford, the probate process has been completed. Monica Lewis has inherited all assets. You have 30 minutes to collect your belongings and vacate the property." my jaw nearly locked in place. 30 minutes? I have lived here for 3 years. How can you say this so casually? Justin adjusted his glasses and still would not look at me. Ethan's will named his wife as the sole beneficiary. Legally, you have no standing here. I looked at Monica, and the truth fell into place like a cruel puzzle. While I had been choosing flowers for my son's funeral, she had been arranging paperwork and securing lawyers. She had been counting the hours until she could strip the house of any trace of me. My chest ached with more than grief now. It was betrayal layered upon heartbreak. Where am I supposed to go? I whispered, the humiliation rising inside me like a tide. That is not my concern, Monica replied, lifting one of the boxes herself. She carried it outside and dropped it onto the driveway. The crash of glass and the sharp scatter of objects rang in my ears. I hurried after her, kneeling on the cold concrete to collect the pieces. On top lay an old black and white photograph of my father in his Navy uniform, the corners torn from the impact. My hands shook as I picked it up, brushing off dirt and snow. Ethan would never have wanted this, I said, my throat tightening. Kieran is dead, she spat, using my son's middle name in mockery, a name only she ever used. And I do not have to pretend anymore. She tipped over another box, and this time my pill bottles rolled across the driveway, clattering like dice on stone. My blood pressure medications scattered beneath my car. I crawled after them, my joints screaming, while Justin quietly loaded the rest of the boxes into my old sedan's trunk. That sedan was the last gift Ethan had given me, after my stroke left me unable to handle the old pickup truck. He had surprised me with it so I could regain independence. Now, it sat there like a coffin on wheels, packed with the remnants of my life. Please, Monica. I tried again as she slammed the last box against the back seat. Just until I can figure out something stable. Just a roof for a few more nights. You had 3 years of free rent, she said with venom. That is more than enough charity. Time to earn your own way. She extended her palm. The keys. My hand trembled as I reached into my pocket. The house key that had felt warm and familiar for years now felt like a piece of dead metal. I placed it into her hand. She tested it in the lock immediately, then slipped it into her purse with a small, satisfied nod. The sound of the lock turning for the final time was like a nail driven into my chest. If you are not gone in 5 minutes, I will call the police, she said flatly. I climbed into the sedan, my body numb, my mind barely processing what had happened. Through the rearview mirror, I saw her slam the door and test the locks again. Justin murmured something I could not hear, then followed her inside. The house lights glowed warmly, but I was already exiled to the cold February night. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed to life with a weak hum. I pulled away from the curb slowly, glancing once at the house where my son had shared Sunday breakfasts with me, where I had thought I would spend the rest of my days in peace. Now those walls belonged to a woman who had planned my humiliation like a chess move. The city blurred as I drove aimlessly through the night. My hands clutched the steering wheel, but inside I felt hollow. It was 9 p.m. The streets of Chicago mostly deserted, the snow swirling under street lamps like mocking confetti. I tried to focus on where to go, but every destination felt closed to me. I had no friends nearby, no siblings alive, no family except the woman who had just locked me out. By 10 p.m., I found myself pulling into a Target parking lot. The fluorescent lights overhead offered a strange kind of security. Other cars were scattered near the back, their windows fogged, their drivers dozing like ghosts of my future. I reclined the seat slightly, but it was a poor excuse for rest. My back ached instantly, the cold creeping through the thin fabric of my funeral suit. I tried to close my eyes, but every time I did, I saw Monica's smile, the way she had dangled those new keys like a trophy. Rage simmered beneath the grief, but it was buried under exhaustion. Around 3 a.m., I started the car again, the heater rattling weakly, barely enough to thaw my frozen hands. I knew I could not keep this up forever. Gas would run out. Money was thin. The car was not a home, only a fragile shell against the world. When the sun rose, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. A hollow-eyed old man stared back, his hair unkempt, his cheeks gray with fatigue. That man looked like someone already defeated. But deep inside, buried under despair, something refused to die. It was not hope yet, but it was a question. Could Ethan really have left me so unprotected, so vulnerable to Monica's cruelty? The thought gnawed at me as I took a sip of stale coffee from the gas station cup beside me. The day had only just begun, and I already sensed it would be the longest chapter of my life. By mid-morning, my back screamed from the miserable sleep in the car. My joints locked from the cold, and my head pounded with the dull ache of a man who had not eaten since yesterday's funeral. I drove aimlessly through Chicago's South Side, passing diners I could not afford and warm homes that mocked me with their curtains drawn tight against the winter air. My wallet held barely $200, the last of what I had managed to save. My pension checks had gone directly into helping Ethan when he launched Crawford Solutions, his technology consulting business. I had believed in him so deeply that I had drained my retirement account to help cover his office rent in downtown Chicago. That investment was my proudest decision. Not because I expected repayment, but because I believed in his future. Now that future lay in the ground, and I was left alone in a car that barely kept the wind outside. I tried social services, thinking perhaps someone could offer guidance. I sat in the waiting room for 3 hours, surrounded by young mothers clutching children and men half my age muttering into cell phones. Finally, a weary clerk with tired eyes called my name. "Mr. Crawford," she said, flipping through my file. "I see your son was your only family contact." I nodded. "I'm sorry, but our senior housing has a waiting list of at least 3 months. Emergency shelters can take you in, but you would need to leave every morning by 7 and return after 5. And there is no storage for personal belongings. 3 months?" I repeated. "I don't have 3 days." Her face softened, but her answer did not change. "I'm sorry, sir. That's all we can do." I walked back to my car with a paper in my pocket and despair weighing on my chest. I sat behind the wheel and closed my eyes, but memory betrayed me. I saw Ethan at 25, nervous but determined, asking me for help to open his first office. I had given him $15,000, everything I had saved over 30 years of factory work. He had hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'll make you proud, Dad." And he had. He built a company with national clients, providing me with pride instead of repayment. I never regretted it. But as I sat there in my car, staring at the gas gauge dipping toward empty, I wondered if that sacrifice had doomed me to this fate. That night, I tried to sleep again in the Target parking lot. But the security guard knocked on my window around midnight. "Sir, is everything okay?" "Car trouble?" he asked, his flashlight glaring into my eyes. My pride would not let me confess. "Yes," I lied, waiting for a tow. He nodded politely and moved on, but I knew I could not linger there. I drove to a different lot, this time behind a grocery store, parking between 2 delivery trucks. By dawn, my body was a mess. My legs had gone numb, the aftermath of my stroke punishing me every time I remained cramped for too long. I bought a black coffee at Burger King with the last of my coins and washed my face in their restroom sink. The man in the mirror barely resembled me. Gray stubble, hollow eyes, funeral clothes that smelled of mildew. I tried to straighten my shoulders, but the weight of humiliation bent them again. February dragged on like a punishment. The second night was worse than the first, the cold sharper, the hunger gnawing more fiercely. I rationed gas, running the heater for 15 minutes each hour, terrified the battery would die completely. Each time I restarted the engine, I feared it would not catch. I ate from the dollar menu, stretching a single hamburger into 2 meals. My medicine bottles rattled half empty, my hands trembling as I counted the pills. Every moment reminded me that I was one slip away from disaster. By the third day, I swallowed my pride and tried to call Monica. Perhaps grief had driven her cruelty, I thought. Perhaps she would soften if she heard my voice. My hands shook as I dialed her number. The line rang once, then cut off with a robotic message. The number you have dialed has been blocked by the subscriber. Blocked, not disconnected. She had anticipated that I would reach out and slam that door shut before I could even knock. The realization hit me with the weight of stone. This was no impulsive act of a grieving widow. Monica had planned every step. She had prepared the boxes while I was at the funeral. She had hired Justin Whitfield to make her cruelty legal. She had even blocked my calls to ensure I had no way back in. She wanted me erased. She wanted Ethan's father gone from her life completely. I drove to the Chicago Public Library the next morning, desperate for warmth and a place to think. The building was a sanctuary compared to my car, with its quiet hum of computers and rows of books that smelled of paper and permanence. I sat at a corner table, my hands wrapped around a cup of water from the vending machine, and began to search records on the public computer. I typed in Ethan's name, scrolling through legal filings and business registrations. Most of it confirmed what Justin had already said. Monica inherited everything: the house, the business, the investments. But something odd caught my eye. Crawford Solutions, Ethan's company, listed 2 legal representatives in its founding documents. One was Whitfield, but the other name made me pause. Alexandra Carter. I remembered her faintly from a business dinner years ago, her sharp intelligence and calm voice. Why had Ethan kept 2 lawyers? And why had Alexandra's name disappeared from everything Justin presented? My pulse quickened as I leaned closer to the screen. Ethan had always been meticulous about finances, careful about planning. Would he really have left me with nothing, knowing my condition and the years I had sacrificed for him? Doubt began to pierce the fog of despair. Maybe Justin had not told me everything. Maybe Monica did not know everything. The idea was fragile, like the first spark of fire in damp wood, but it refused to die. As I left the library that evening, shuffling back toward the car that had become my prison, a thought crystallized. Monica believed she had destroyed me. She believed she had erased Ethan's father from the world. But perhaps Ethan had been smarter than even she knew. The wind cut through my thin coat, and my breath fogged the air. But for the first time since Ethan's death, I did not feel entirely powerless. Somewhere in the tangle of legal documents and business records lay a truth Monica had not accounted for, and I was determined to find it. Somewhere in the tangle of legal documents and business records lay a truth Monica had not accounted for, and I was determined to find it. That determination carried me back into the Chicago Public Library the next morning, my steps slow but fueled by purpose. I returned to the same corner table, the one with the flickering lamp, and logged back into the public computer. My hands trembled as I typed again. Crawford Solutions Legal Counsel Alexandra Carter. Her name appeared, linked to contracts and incorporation documents that dated back to the company's earliest days. She had been there from the beginning, long before Ethan's business flourished into something worth millions. But after Ethan's marriage to Monica, Alexandra's name all but vanished from public filings. Only Whitfield's name remained. The change felt too deliberate, too neat. Why would Ethan cut off one lawyer but keep another? Or had he? I leaned back in the chair, the hum of the library surrounding me, and thought about my son. Ethan had never been careless with money or with trust. After my stroke, he had insisted I move in with him, telling me that family came before everything. "You took care of me when I was helpless, Dad," he had said then. "Now it's my turn." That was Ethan. Methodical, careful, always planning. Would a man like that really leave his father defenseless against Monica? The question burned in me until I could no longer sit still. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the thin wallet that held Justin Whitfield's business card. My thumb pressed against the embossed lettering, but my hand refused to dial. Justin had stood in my living room and watched Monica dump my belongings onto the driveway. He had spoken with the calm of a man who already knew the cruelty being carried out. No, I could not trust him. Instead, I scribbled down Alexandra Carter's number from the library directory and stepped outside into the brittle February air. The payphone on the high corner was crusted with ice, but it worked after I shoved 2 quarters into the slot. My heart pounded as the line rang. "Carter and Associates, this is Olivia Parker speaking. How may I direct your call?" My throat was dry. "My name is Harold Crawford. My son, Ethan. He was a client of Miss Carter's years ago." There was silence on the other end. Then the receptionist's tone shifted. "One moment, sir." I waited, staring at the traffic light blinking red over Michigan Avenue. The line clicked, and then a calm, professional voice answered. "Mr. Crawford, this is Alexandra Carter. I have been hoping you would call. The words nearly made me drop the receiver." You knew I would?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Ethan left instructions in case this very situation came to pass. Can you come to my office today?" "I have no money for legal fees," I admitted, my voice cracking with both shame and fear. "That will not be an issue," she said firmly. "Please be here at 2 o'clock. We have a great deal to discuss." When I hung up the phone, my hand shook so badly I had to lean against the wall to steady myself. For the first time since Ethan's death, I felt something flicker inside me. It was not yet victory, but it was no longer despair either. It was the faintest glow of hope. At precisely 2 o'clock, I stood outside a brick office building on Wabash Avenue, the kind of place that smelled faintly of polished wood and old money. My suit was wrinkled, my shoes scuffed, but I lifted my chin and walked inside. The receptionist, Olivia, greeted me with warmth, guiding me into a waiting area lined with shelves of leather-bound law books. A few minutes later, Alexandra Carter herself appeared. She was exactly as I remembered from Ethan's early business dinners. Tall, composed, with eyes that missed nothing. She extended her hand firmly, not pityingly, and guided me into her office. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, and certificates gleamed in gold frames. I sank into the chair across from her desk, the exhaustion of weeks pressing down on me. But her presence steadied me. "Harold," she began, folding her hands. Ethan came to me over a year ago with concerns about Monica. He feared she would not protect you if something happened to him. My breath caught. He knew. He suspected. Alexandra corrected gently. Ethan loved his wife, but he was not blind. He worried that her interest in his finances had grown unhealthy, so he prepared something privately. That is why he continued to keep me on as his confidential counsel, even when Monica insisted everything go through Whitfield. I stared at her, my pulse racing. Prepared something? What do you mean? She rose and crossed the room to a safe built into the wall. Her fingers turned the dial with quiet confidence until it clicked. From inside, she withdrew a large envelope sealed with wax. My name was written across the front in Ethan's precise handwriting. For Father, when justice is needed. The sight blurred before my eyes. My son's hand, my son's words, my son's planning, reaching out from beyond the grave. Alexandra set it on the desk before me with reverence. Ethan asked me to keep this sealed unless Monica acted against you. I think we can both agree the time has come. My hand trembled as I touched the envelope, the seal unbroken. I wanted to tear it open immediately, but a wave of emotion nearly overwhelmed me. For weeks I had believed Monica had destroyed me. For weeks I had believed Ethan had left me with nothing. But now, as the weight of the envelope pressed into my palm, I realized Ethan had not forgotten me at all. He had seen what I could not, and he had prepared for it. Inside, Alexandra said softly, are documents that will change everything. And Harold, there is also a message from Ethan himself. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. For the first time since my son's death, I felt like I was no longer a victim. I was being armed for something greater. For the first time since my son's death, I felt like I was no longer a victim. I was being armed for something greater. My fingers shook as I broke the wax seal and slid the documents out of the envelope. The first thing I saw was a letter in Ethan's handwriting, neat and steady, just as I remembered from the notes he used to leave me on the kitchen counter. My eyes blurred with tears, but I forced myself to read every word. Dad, if you are holding this letter, it means my fears came true. I wanted to believe Monica would take care of you, but I saw the way she looked at you, the way she questioned me about my estate, the way she calculated instead of cared. I knew there was a chance she would turn on you once I was gone. I could not let that happen. I gripped the paper tighter. His words were not just ink on the page. They were his voice, his presence reaching across time to protect me. I created a separate trust. The letter continued. One Monica cannot touch. It is funded with the returns from the investment you gave me to start Crawford Solutions. The $15,000 you sacrificed for me has grown into something I can finally give back to you. The amount is $6.5 million. It is yours alone, protected by legal instruments Monica will never access. I left specific instructions with Alexandra to ensure you receive everything safely. And Dad, I recorded a message for you, because I wanted you to see my face when you learn the truth. Beneath the letter was a flash drive, labeled in Ethan's handwriting. For Dad. Alexandra handed me a small laptop from her desk and inserted the drive. The screen flickered, and suddenly Ethan's face filled the display. My breath caught. He looked strong, confident, the way I remembered him before his illness, his eyes burning with conviction. Dad, his voice said, steady but emotional. If you are watching this, Monica has done exactly what I feared. I wish I could be there to shield you myself. But since I cannot, I built this plan to make sure you are never left vulnerable. The money is protected under your name, secured by biometric access only you can provide. Monica will inherit the house and my visible accounts, but she will never know about this. You are safe, Dad. You will never be at her mercy. My throat tightened so much I could barely breathe. Ethan leaned closer in the video, his tone softening. You gave me everything when I had nothing. You gave me your savings, your trust, your time. This is my way of returning what I could never repay in life. Do not let her break you. Stand tall, Dad. This is your chance to live with dignity, not dependence. The video ended, and the screen went dark. For a long moment, I sat frozen, my hand covering my mouth, my chest heaving with a mix of grief and gratitude. Alexandra placed her hand gently on the desk, giving me space but anchoring me with her presence. I finally whispered, "He knew." "He knew all along," she nodded. "Your son was meticulous. He predicted what Monica would do and prepared for it. You are not powerless, Harold. You have more resources than she can imagine." I pressed my hand against the envelope, the weight of Ethan's planning heavy in my palm. For weeks, Monica had treated me like a discarded burden, certain she had erased me. But Ethan had made sure she had not erased me at all. He had turned my sacrifice into power, power Monica did not know existed. Still, anger simmered beneath the gratitude. "She threw me into the street with nothing," I said bitterly, while she stood in that house and gloated, knowing she had the will in her hand. She thinks she has already won. Alexandra's eyes hardened. That belief is her weakness. She is reckless when she feels untouchable. When the time comes, we will use that against her. As if summoned by those words, fate delivered the first strike. That evening, after Alexandra drove me to the guest house of her mother, Eleanor Crawford, where I would be staying for now, headlights swept across the gravel driveway. A silver SUV pulled up sharply, parking at an angle that blocked the exit. The door slammed, and Monica stepped out, her designer coat snapping in the wind. Her face burned with fury as she stormed toward the porch. "Harold!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the cold air like a blade. "Get out here right now. We need to talk." I stood frozen, the envelope still clutched in my hand, while Eleanor appeared at the main house doorway, her 80-year-old frame radiating indignation far larger than her body. "Who is that?" she asked sharply. "My daughter-in-law," I said quietly, though the word felt foul on my tongue. "Not anymore, she isn't," Eleanor replied, her eyes narrowing as Monica stomped up the steps. "Not if she thinks she can shout on my property." Monica's eyes found mine, and for the first time, I saw something beneath the rage. Not triumph, not cruelty, but fear. Monica's eyes found mine, and for the first time, I saw something beneath the rage. Not triumph, not cruelty, but fear. She stopped 3 feet from the porch, her heels crunching against the gravel. Her voice carried a practiced authority, the kind she used when she thought she had already won. "You think you can hide from me here, Harold? You think you can scheme behind my back?" Before I could reply, Eleanor Crawford stepped down from the main house porch, her silver hair catching the weak winter light, her shoulders squared like a general about to march into battle. "Young lady," she said with Arctic calm, "you are disturbing my guest. Lower your voice or leave this property at once." Monica turned toward her with a sneer. "Guest? This pathetic old man belongs in a nursing home, not playing house with strangers." Eleanor's chin lifted, and her voice cut sharper than Monica's. "That pathetic old man served his country, raised a successful son, and deserves more dignity than you could ever comprehend. He is my guest, which makes his business my business. And I am not your grandmother." Thank goodness Monica's composure cracked. Her face flushed, her words spilling with venom. "You have no idea what you are meddling with. I have lawyers, I have court orders. I can bury both of you in paperwork until you choke on it." I stepped forward then, my hand still tight around the envelope Ethan had left me. My voice came out steady, stronger than I had felt in weeks. "Bring your lawyers, Monica. Bring your orders. We will be ready." Her head snapped toward me, and for the first time, I saw doubt flicker behind her eyes. For weeks she had faced a broken man begging for mercy, a man willing to sleep in his car to avoid confrontation. Now she faced someone different, someone armed with knowledge she did not have. "What do you know?" she hissed, stepping closer, her perfume sharp and bitter in the wind. "What did Ethan tell you?" I held her gaze. "Nothing. But he told his lawyers plenty." Her face drained of color as the implications sank in. Ethan had been meticulous about business, about planning, about protection. If he had suspected her, she knew there was every chance he had built something she could not touch. "You are bluffing," she snapped. "Ethan trusted me completely." "Ethan loved you," I corrected. "Trust and love are not the same thing." Eleanor stepped between us, her presence commanding despite her age. "Enough. You have shouted and threatened long enough. Leave now before I call the police and report you for trespassing." Monica hesitated, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Then, with a sharp pivot, she stomped back to her SUV. "This is not over, Harold," she shouted, her voice shaking with something that sounded far too much like panic. "When I am finished with you, you will wish you had stayed in that parking lot where you belong." Her tires sprayed gravel as she reversed out of the driveway, her headlights vanishing into the trees. Silence settled over the yard, broken only by the wind. Eleanor exhaled slowly, smoothing her hair back with one hand. "Well," she said with remarkable composure, "your daughter-in-law has a vocabulary that would embarrass a sailor." For the first time since Ethan's funeral, I laughed. It was not loud, not carefree, but it was real. "She is not my daughter-in-law anymore," I said, watching the empty road where Monica's SUV had disappeared. "She made that clear the moment she locked me out." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "What will she do next?" "She will panic," I replied, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "And panicked people make mistakes." Eleanor smiled faintly. "Howard raised me to appreciate good strategy. You sound like a man who is ready for war." The war came sooner than I expected. Within 3 days, a process server arrived at Eleanor's cottage with thick legal documents in hand. Monica had filed a petition claiming I was mentally incompetent, unfit to manage finances, and in need of a court-appointed guardian. My guardian, of course, would be her. "They are desperate," Alexandra Carter said after reviewing the papers at Eleanor's kitchen table. Her tone was calm, but her eyes gleamed with anticipation. These kinds of lawsuits often backfire spectacularly. Still, we must treat it seriously. I felt the old humiliation rise inside me again. To be labeled incompetent, to have my mind questioned, it was a cruel tactic, and Monica knew exactly where it would sting. But Alexandra placed a reassuring hand on mine. "We will win this, Harold. You are sharper than most men half your age. A clinical evaluation will prove it." The evaluation came at Chicago General Hospital 2 days later. Dr. James Ellison, a respected psychologist with 3 decades of experience, conducted hours of tests, memory, problem-solving, comprehension. I answered every question with care, every puzzle with patience. When it was over, Doctor, Ellison smiled. Mr. Crawford demonstrates complete competency. In fact, his memory retention and analytical ability are well above average for his age. Whoever suggested otherwise clearly did not know this man. When Alexandra relayed the report to me, relief washed through me like sunlight, breaking through storm clouds. Monica had tried to strip me of my dignity with lies, but the truth was stronger. Meanwhile, Monica and her lawyer, Richard Crawford, no relation to me, just a coincidence of name, scrambled to find witnesses who would speak against my character. They contacted former neighbors, Ethan's old colleagues, even the staff at the Burger King where I had bought cheap meals during my nights of homelessness. Every attempt backfired. Neighbors spoke of my kindness and reliability. Business associates recalled my support during Ethan's early years. Even the Burger King manager defended me, describing the quiet dignity I had carried despite obvious hardship. Alexandra called me one evening with satisfaction clear in her voice. "They tried to paint you as weak, Harold, but all they have done is prove your strength. Not a single person will speak against you. Monica's fishing expedition has caught nothing but your community's respect." I sat back in Eleanor's kitchen chair, the documents spread before me, the weight of weeks lifting slowly from my shoulders. For the first time, Monica's empire of cruelty looked fragile. For the first time, I realized the war was no longer hers to win. For the first time, Monica's empire of cruelty looked fragile. And for the first time, I realized the war was no longer hers to win. That realization carried me into the meeting Alexandra Carter arranged for the following week. She had requested that Monica and her lawyer, Richard Crawford, attend a discussion regarding irregularities in the estate. The phrasing alone was enough to bait them into showing up. Monica was too proud to ignore anything that hinted at a threat to her new empire. The conference room in Alexandra's office felt charged with anticipation. The long mahogany table gleamed under soft lights, and every leather chair seemed positioned for confrontation. I wore a new suit, one bought with the first small withdrawal from the hidden account Ethan had secured for me. It fit perfectly, and more than fabric, it gave me back something I thought I had lost: stature. At 3 o'clock sharp, Monica swept in with Richard trailing behind her. She wore her sharpest black blazer, her hair pinned tight, her heels clicking like gunshots against the floor. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. "Let us get this over with," she said, sliding into a chair. "I assume this is about some baseless complaint Harold has cooked up in his new fantasy world." Richard opened his briefcase, his manner polished, his expression smug. "Miss Carter, you should know my client has no interest in prolonging petty disputes. Mr. Crawford has already received a stipend under the will. The estate is closed. Any challenge will be dismissed." Alexandra folded her hands calmly. "We are not here to discuss the primary estate. We are here to discuss what Ethan Crawford put in place privately. Mr. Harold Crawford has information that requires full attention." All eyes turned to me. My heart pounded, but I leaned forward, placing a thick folder on the table. My voice was steady, clear. "Ethan was not careless, Monica. He saw things you did not realize he saw. He prepared for you." Monica's smirk faltered for the first time. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder and slid documents. Across the table, bank statements, offshore account records, biometric access papers, all neatly organized by Alexandra. The numbers on the pages glared up like a lighthouse beam in the dark. $6.5 million, I said quietly. That is what Ethan secured, hidden beyond your reach, protected under my name. Money grown from the very investment I made to start his business. Money that will never belong to you. Richard's face drained of color as he scanned the papers. His polished facade cracked, confusion flashing in his eyes. Where did these come from? From Ethan himself, Alexandra answered crisply. He retained me as private counsel for this very reason. These assets were established using funds that predated his marriage. They were structured legally as separate property and designated to his father. They are entirely outside the probate estate. Monica's chair screeched as she shoved herself upright. This is fraud, she shouted. Those assets belong to me. Ethan told me everything. He never would have hidden money from me. I met her eyes, unflinching. Ethan loved you, Monica. But he was not blind. He protected me because he knew you would not. And he was right. Her hands shook as she clutched the papers, scanning them desperately. Richard leaned closer, whispering something in her ear. But I could see the panic spreading across her face. For weeks she had strutted through life believing she had stripped me of everything. Now she realized she had only half of what Ethan left behind, while I held the other half. Where's the rest? She whispered, her voice cracking. The estate was worth more than this. Where is the other money? Her words betrayed her. She had researched Ethan's worth down to the last dollar, preparing for this exact battle, and in her desperation, she revealed her knowledge. Richard's head snapped toward her, horrified at the slip. Alexandra's lips curved into the faintest smile. Thank you, Monica, Alexandra said coolly. That statement alone proves you knew Ethan's true value and deliberately concealed it during probate. That is perjury territory. Monica's face paled, her bravado collapsing. You cannot do this to me, she hissed. I will take you all down with me. You already did this to yourself, I said, my voice calm but edged with the weight of weeks of humiliation. When you threw me into the street, you revealed who you are. Ethan knew it before I did, and he planned for it. You thought you had destroyed me, but you have only destroyed yourself. For the first time since Ethan's funeral, Monica had no words. Her lawyer gathered the papers with trembling hands, shoving them back into the folder as though removing them from sight could erase the truth. But it was too late. The tide had shifted. As they stormed out of the conference room, Monica turned back, her eyes burning with a mix of fury and dread. This is not finished, Harold. You cannot humiliate me like this and expect to walk away. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the strength of Ethan's foresight flowing through me. No, Monica, I said softly. It is you who will not walk away. No, Monica, I said softly. It is you who will not walk away. Those words settled over the conference room like a verdict. For the first time since Ethan's death, I saw her facade splinter. She did not storm out with triumph, she stumbled out with dread. Richard Crawford trailed after her, his face pale, his confidence shaken. The door closed and silence filled the room. Alexandra leaned back in her chair, her voice calm but edged with satisfaction. It has begun. The unraveling came swiftly. Within a week, Monica's reputation suffered its first cracks. Richard, humiliated by how thoroughly Alexandra had outmaneuvered him, began to distance himself from her, quietly signaling to colleagues that he wanted nothing to do with her affairs. Her attempts to challenge the offshore accounts collapsed against the airtight protections Ethan had built. The documents Alexandra revealed were not just strong, they were unbreakable. Every time she tried to claw at them, the law cut her hands instead. Meanwhile, I began to rebuild. With Alexandra's guidance, I withdrew enough from Ethan's hidden trust to purchase a modest but dignified home in Lakewood, a quiet neighborhood shaded with old oak trees. The day I signed the papers, I stood in the doorway of my new house and let the silence wash over me. It was not just a roof. It was proof that Monica had failed. I furnished it carefully, not extravagantly, but with the intention of creating a home that reflected dignity. In the living room, I placed the restored photo of my father in his Navy uniform, the same one Monica had once flung into the street. Now it sat framed in a place of honor, as if standing guard over my rebirth. While my life grew steadier, Monica's crumbled. The house she had claimed from Ethan became her prison. Property taxes mounted, utilities drained her accounts, and the market turned against her. By late spring, she was forced to put it up for sale at a reduced price, desperate to escape the mounting costs. I drove past once, the for sale sign tilting in the yard, weeds overtaking the driveway where she had once dumped my belongings. The sight brought no joy, only the quiet knowledge that justice was working. But Monica was not finished. Desperation twisted her pride into reckless moves. She filed one last lawsuit, accusing me of fraud, insisting Ethan had never intended to separate his assets. The courtroom was tense, but Alexandra dismantled her claim with precision. Ethan's video recordings, his detailed instructions, and the timeline of his financial planning all painted a picture too strong to contest. When the judge dismissed her case with prejudice, Monica's face collapsed into her hands. She had not only lost, she had branded herself as a woman willing to twist the truth even under oath. Her downfall was not dramatic. It was methodical. One day at a time, her life emptied of the comfort she had stolen. Creditors called. Former friends avoided her. Richard abandoned her as a client. By summer, whispers circulated that she was filing for bankruptcy. The final encounter came unexpectedly. I was leaving the courthouse after signing documents finalizing my ownership of Ethan's offshore assets when I saw her. She stood outside on the steps, her hair unkempt, her once stylish clothes replaced with bargain bin imitations. The sharp edge in her eyes was gone, replaced by exhaustion. She approached slowly, her voice a whisper. "Harold, please. I know I made mistakes. I was cruel, but I need help. Just a little, until I can get back on my feet." For a moment, I saw the woman Ethan had once loved, or at least the mask she had worn then. But the memory of her standing in the doorway after the funeral, smirking as she tossed my life into boxes, cut through any pity. I thought of those nights in the car, shivering, hungry, humiliated. I thought of the way she blocked my calls, determined to erase me from existence, and I remembered her words. "Stop pretending you matter. Pack your bags and learn to survive." I met her gaze steadily, my voice calm. "Learn to survive on your own, Monica." Just like you told me, her face crumpled, her body folding as though the weight of her choices had finally crushed her. I walked past her without another word, the sound of my footsteps steady against the courthouse stone. That evening, I visited Ethan's grave. The grass around the marker had grown green and thick in the summer sun. I knelt, placing fresh flowers at the base, and traced the inscription with my fingers. "Beloved son and father." My voice was quiet, steady. "Justice has prevailed, Ethan. You saw what I could not, and you made sure I would be safe. Monica thought she could erase me, but all she erased was herself. Your plan worked, and now I live with dignity again, because of you." The wind stirred the trees above me, carrying the scent of summer blossoms. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Not because I had won wealth, but because I had reclaimed my place in the world. I had been cast out, humiliated, nearly destroyed. Yet in the end, I walked away whole, while Monica stood in ruins of her own making. She had told me to survive, and I had. But survival had turned into something far greater. I had regained my dignity, my purpose, and the truth that cruelty always consumes itself. If you liked this story, subscribe and tell us your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next one, click on the box on the screen.